In the previous part, we made our animals clickable. Now we can click our animals and then the currency counter will be increased. Also, you can buy new animals, but we still can't merge them. So now let's add the merging buttons. If you have two animals of the same level, you can merge them. And then you will get a new animal of the next level. At first, let's go to our index.html file, and here let's create this button manually so we can see what we need to generate with our JavaScript. Inside of the div with the ID grid, let's create a new div with the class cell. And now you will see that we can generate new cells manually. And this is because in our JavaScript, inside of the render function, we have this line that clears an entire board before generating new cells. So let's go to our game start and let's comment out these functions for a while. Now you can see only HTML elements that we have created manually. So let's return to our index.html file, and here let's manually create our board. So I added 16 cells, and now inside of the first cell, let's add a new animal. So for that, I created a new div with the class pet and with the text content of our chick emoji. And now let's create a new button inside of this div. So at first I expand this div, and now let's add a new button. Now you can see a very small button right under our chick. Let's write a word merge. And now you can see that we have a normal button right after our chick. In the style.css, you can see this block, and this block adds all the styles to the button that is inside of the element with the class cell. So now you can click this button, but nothing will happen because we don't attach any triggers to this button. Let's also add a class drag over for this button. And now you see that our button is highlighted. And this is because in our CSS, we have the style drag over that adds this stroke right after our element. And then this green light that you see is just a box shadow. So what we want to create with our JavaScript, we want to have this default buttons. And then when user clicks this button, we want to attach this class drag over so the user can visually see that this animal is selected. Currently, I don't delete this manually created HTML board, we'll delete it later. So let's use it as a reference so we understand what we need to generate with our JavaScript. So now let's go to our JavaScript file and let's comment out our GameStar functions. And now you see that we have chick without our button merge. So we generate our board inside of the render function. Now, if our JavaScript board contains the data about our animal, we need to create all these elements. So the first element is a div with the class cell. So you can see that we create this div in our JavaScript and then we attach the class cell to this div. The next we need to create div with the class pet. And now you see that if our cell data is not null, so it means that our cell data contains the information about our pet. We create a new div pet div and then we attach the class pet and the text content of our emoji. And now we need to create a new HTML element button. So right after our pets and before our trigger section, I create a new section merging. And here let's create a new HTML button. Now we created our merge button element. The next step is to add our text content. So we will add a constant word merge and we will not change it later. Now let's attach the class drag over. As I said, we need to attach this class only when we click this button. For that, inside of the trigger section, I can add a new trigger. In the previous video, we used anonymous function for our trigger. So this is a function without any name, and this is used only on one line. One of the advantages of this function is that we can pass it as a variable. So now let's create a new anonymous function, but I also add curly braces and then I expand them. And now we will not call a new function, let's just write all the changes that we want directly inside of this anonymous function. So we want to attach our class drag over. Now we have created our button, but it still doesn't know where it is located. So as you see, our button is a child of the pet div. So now, before we append our pet div to the cell div, let's append our button to the pet div. And now you can see that we have created an animal with the button merge. And if I click this button, now you see that this animal is active. But even if we have many animals, we still can't merge them. So we can just activate these buttons, but we also need to write a logic for merging our animals. Our render function becomes longer and longer, so I don't want to write all the logic inside of this trigger. Let's write a new function try to merge that will be responsible for the merging logic. So I call try to merge function and then I pass the index of the current tile. And now let's create this function. Inside of the section core actions, let's create a new function. This function wants to receive the index about the current cell that have been clicked. So here, let's write a new parameter cell index. And now we know that this index is a number from the 0 until the board.length. But we also need the index of the previously clicked animal because we want to merge two animals together. So for that, we can create two global variables. So the merge cell index 1 and the merge cell index 2. In the beginning of our code, we have the game data. So let's add both these variables. So I added two variables, merge cell index 1 and merge cell index 2, and I put the default value to be equal to null. Now we know that this variable can be equal to null or an index. So inside of the try to merge function, let's try to think about all the possible cases. So the first case, when both these indexes are equal to null. If they both are equal to null, we want to set our current cell index to the variable merge cell index 1. Then we will have all other cases, but we want to finish this function, so let's write the keyword return to finish this function. So now, when I click the merge button, you see that this button is selected, but if I buy a new animal, our board is recreated from scratch and currently our render function doesn't know which animal have been selected. Currently we attach our class name only if we click on an animal. Actually, we need to check that if our merge cell index is equal to our current index, it means that this animal have been selected previously, and even when we recreate our board, we want to attach our drag over class. So after the merging, let's add this if statement. If our merge cell index 1 is equal to I, or if our merge cell index 2 is equal to I, it means that the current animal is active and we need to attach our class. Now let's test how it works. I click the merge button and then I buy a new animal. And now we see that we have created a new board, but we preserved the state of the previously clicked animal. So now if I have many animals, I can still select many animals, but if I buy a new animal, you will see that only the first animal preserves the selected state, and this is because in our try to merge function, we save the index only of the first selected animal. Let's think about other cases. The second case is when our merge cell index 1 is not equal to null, so it means that it has any index, but our merge cell index 2 still is equal to null. We want to attach our cell index to the merge cell index 2. And now it means that two animals are selected. In our logic, when we select two animals, there are two possible cases. There can be an error, so for example their levels are different, or we merge them together. So at first let's write the merging logic and then we will work on the validation. Let's create a new animal of the next level. So I have a constant pets that contains all the data about all the possible animals. And here you see that they are sorted in the incremented order. So it means that the first pet we can access with the index 0, the second pet we can access with the index 1, and it has the level 2. We can access the last pet with the index 9 and it has the level 10. So here we have a formula where we can access the next pet using the level of the current pet. So I wrote this formula here that the next pet index is equal to the level of our current pet. But inside of the try to merge function, I don't have access to our current animals. So let's access them. So I know that inside of this if statement, both our variables have index. And it means that I can use this index to access our pet elements inside of the board. And now to get the next level pet, I can write the pet1.level. There is no difference which pet we will use, the pet1 or the pet2, because we imply that for the merging, they must have the same level. So for example, the next level pet can be equal to bunny and it has all the same parameters like emoji name, level and reward. So now when we want to merge two animals, we want to remove the first selected animal from the board and then we want to update the second selected animal to be a new animal of the next level. So let's remove the previously selected animal. So I know that the index of this animal is stored in the merge cell index variable and I know that in our board we have the permanent data about all our cells. So now we can access our board by the index of the first selected animal and we can set it to null. And now in the same way, let's access the second animal and let's set it to a next level pet. Now let's test how it works. So I select the first animal and now if I click the second animal, you will see that both these animals are selected, but nothing happens. Actually, they have been replaced, but we didn't call the render function yet, so we don't see these changes on our board. For example, our buy button call our render function. So let's buy a new animal. And now you see that we have created an animal of the next level. So at first, let's call the render function. And also you can see that our newly created animal preserves the state of being active. So before the render function, let's reset our merge cell indexes. Now let's test this function again. I can select the first animal and then if I select the second animal, you see that we create a new animal of the next level and this animal is not selected. So now let's work on the validation. So for example, if I have two animals of different level, I can't merge them. Let's check that the levels of animals are the same. I call this section validation and now let's create a new if statement. So if their levels are not equal, we want to show this error to our user. For that we can use alert function. Here I need to write a message. So let's write that the levels are different. And then I want to stop this function and for that I can write the return keyword. Let's test how it works. I select the first animal and then if I select the second pet, you see the message that the levels are different. But then you see that both animals preserve the selected state, so we need to reset it. Actually, I can copy an entire reset block and then I can add it to our validation. Now let's make the same situation. So you see the message that levels are different and then you see that the selected state have been removed. Our function works correctly, but there are still several edge cases. We check only that the levels of our animals are the same. We don't check that the indexes are different. So it means that I can merge the animal to itself. So we want to prevent this logic and for that let's add a new validation. If merge cell indexes are the same, let's write the message that you can't merge a pet to itself. And after that, let's add our reset block. Now let's test it. So if I click the merge button 2 times, I see the message that you can't merge a pet to itself. And then I see that the selected state is gone. Currently, the last level of our animals is 10 and this is a unicorn. And the problem is that we can't merge the animals of the last level because we don't have the animal of the next level. So let's also check that if there is no animal of the next level, you can't merge these animals. We have a formula for the next pet index. This is equal to our pet.level and then we pass this index to the pets array, and this pets array returns an object. Actually, if there is no animal, it will return undefined. Let's check that if the next level pet is equal to undefined, it means that we are trying to merge the animals of the maximum level. And then I add a reset block. So now it means that the next level pet will always be an object. So let's remove this comment. And now let's test how it works. Currently I have two animals of the maximum level, and if I try to merge them, you will see the message that you can't merge animals of the maximum level. Now you see that in all these validations, we are using the same reset block. So to prevent repetitions, let's create a new helper function, reset indexes. In the helper section, let's write a new function. So we don't pass any parameters to this function because we will reset the global variables. Inside of this function, I reset our indices, but all the time when we do a change with our board, we call the render function. So here, let's call our render function also. And now I can call this function instead of our reset block. In all places where I have this comment reset, I replace this block with reset indexes, but only one word that we can't remove is return, because it stops the current function. And also, we are using the same block in the end of our function. There's also one counter that we need to increase for our UI. So when we merge our animals, we want to increase the counter of the best level animal. In our global variables, you see that we have a variable best level. Every time when we create a new animal, let's increase this counter. And now let's test how it works. So I have two animals and then I want to merge them. And now you see that we have the animal of the second level, so the best level counter is set to 2. So the best level counter shows 2. But actually, we can merge many animals of the same level, but here we have the problem that if I try to merge the same animals of the first level, we will increase our counter even though that we don't have a new animal of the third level. Instead of just increasing our counter, we need to check, does the level of the next level pet is higher than the current best level? So the easiest way how to check it is by using the math.max function. So we can pass many values inside of this function and then it will return only one number that is the highest. So in our case, we will pass two parameters. The first one will be the current best level and the next parameter will be the level of the next pet. So let's test how it works. Now, if I create a new animal of the next level, you see that our counter have been increased. But then if I create this animal again, you see that our counter remains the same. So now let's create a new animal of the third level. And again, our counter have been increased. So it means that our function works correctly. Now we have a fully working game where you can merge different animals and you can create a new animal of the next level. But every time when you refresh the page, you lose all the progress that you have. But for saving our games, we need to learn a new theory about JSON files. So in the next video, we'll learn about JSON and then we will be able to implement our save load and reset buttons.